sure enough, like halfway through my training, I come back from my 3 weeks of training in on the East Coast, and we're just getting ready to take our exams, and all these things happen, and then like 9/11 happens, and I was like, oh boy, now what are we gonna do?
Adam, when you go through like LinkedIn pages, most people have like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 different jobs that they had gone through. Yours literally has the colleges and the education and then right in to entrepreneurship. One, how did you stumble into something that has lasted that long? Like you found your passion right out of the gate. And then why did that journey even start? Like, how'd you know entrepreneurship was your path?
Great question, Ryan. I think a couple of things here. One, I'm maybe a product of the times, like social media and me. I don't know that we don't get along or I just don't understand it, but it kind of freaks me out a little bit. So I spend as little time on it as possible. That's the first thing. Entrepreneurship for me, I think you either know you're an entrepreneur or you're not. And a pretty good indication of that is that you hate working for other people. Like it just doesn't work. Doesn't make sense. I mean, I had a corporate job one time, gave it my best, it just didn't last.
When did you know? And it's interesting because I 100% agree with you there. Like there's, like you just kind of know, but some people realize it at different stages. Like for me, and I still kind of work for the man because I've been in the Navy now for 20 some years. And that's a very different dynamic. Like I feel like for my ADHD brain, it's like I need something where there's a checklist and I can just like do things. And then there's entrepreneurship, which just everything is crazy. But for me, like I was selling creepy crawlers in third grade, like taking custom orders for the Easy Bake Oven. Like when did you know that you were an entrepreneur?
I think from a very early age, I thought, okay, I'm setting out into the world. I come from probably 3 or 4 generations of entrepreneurs, so I really didn't have a taste of the style of what life is like to have a routine and go to work. I worked, I worked for entrepreneurs. My father was an attorney, but he had a private practice. So everything I saw was you do what you got to do to be successful. I knew from an early age that when I was searching for my path, that I never wanted to be capped as far as my compensation. I always wanted to have creative autonomy to make my own decisions. And so it may have taken me a while to realize that you better work for yourself. But I think from a very early age, I always sought things that, even if they weren't a quote unquote job, that had those parameters. So things like real estate interest me, or insurance services or financial services, things where I could really control my own business, even if I was under the umbrella of some other place.
And then how did that take you? Like, did you know when you went into college that you were going to be going down that path, or was your first gig out of college the good old college try for the first corporation?
Now we're going to start getting deep, Ryan.
Let's do it.
So we had a pretty good size family business, and I always thought that I was going to be working in that family business. So I honestly hadn't spent a lot of time wondering what I was going to do. All I knew is I want to be just like my grandfather. That's all I knew. And since my single digit years, I had spent time in that business. And then through college, I had always worked alongside of going through college. And then when I graduated, I got that amazing phone call from my uncle, and he said something to the effect of, we're in a little bit of a recession now, and I'd hate to have you start knowing that we might not be here in a few years. And so that's a nice way to say that I got fired by my uncle. So I had no idea what I wanted to do in life, and that really put me in a tailspin. I I had too many options. So I did what any self-respecting man did, and thought about getting a job for a few months, and then packed a bag and went to Europe for the better part of a year. Now, granted, I did work wherever I went, whether it was peeling potatoes or working in tourism or ski instructing or things like that. It was a great experience.
You had me in the first half where you were like, just like what every normal person would do when they're searching for a job, just pack up everything and head off to Europe. That's very normal. Here's what's interesting. It took me, so I was kind of born and raised in Baltimore, and we didn't really get out much outside of Maryland. At least we would go to Ocean City. Like everything really kind of happened inside of that Maryland ecosystem. I didn't even go see the world until eventually I joined the Navy. And then it was probably like 2 years in, so probably 20 or 21, I finally saw South America, and then saw Asia around 25. But my point here is that like it took me a long time to kind of see the world and start that kind of travel, but I learned a lot. And what are some of those lessons? Ski instructing. Were you in Switzerland, by the way? Where was the ski?
Austria.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, we'll talk about that offline. Like what was that like? What were you picking up? Because I'm sure looking back, and maybe we're going to get into your company, but there's a lot of things that you've done since then where you might have pulled from those types of experiences. Like what were you learning on that journey?
Honestly, it was that exploration of what do I want to do with my life. I was a bit nervous. I was a bit trepidatious. I had no direction and no path. I had too many decisions. So I just wanted to buy some time and see the world. And a bit of it was just being advantageous. I knew that I didn't have any roots. I didn't have any responsibilities. I had a little bit of money saved up. I borrowed a little bit of money and just took off and tried to support myself as long as I could. So, you learn. I think I learned a bit about marketing. I learned a little bit about sales. I learned a little bit about tourism because I was traveling around and in those environments. So yeah, that's about it. But I certainly knew how to make friends, and that was a valuable thing to learn. No matter where you are in life.
And then what brought you back? So you're gallivanting the world. You're living the dream at this point. Like what brings you back?
You're bringing back such memories. So I really didn't have plans to come home. While I was ski instructing, I met a group of Israelis. They said, well, what are you doing after the ski season? They invited me down to Israel. One of them taught me how to water ski. Another one's brother was an international skipper. I'd always want to learn how to go scuba diving. So I went and got my certifications and advanced certifications, and I got a job on a dive boat that was rented out by BBC television to do a documentary on all the recently discovered dive sites. I mean, my life was pretty cool. I mean, I was doing amazing things, and yes, I was out there to find my path, but it was fraught with amazing distractions that were great. So I happen to have a little bit of longevity in my family. But at some point, nature takes its course, and I started having relatives pass away. So my 105-year-old grandmother passed away. So naturally, I had to fly home for that. And I was like, okay, back over to Europe. And sure enough, a few months later, my grandmother passed away on my father's side. And I came back and I was like, geez, am I really going to go back to Europe and do this all again? It seemed like a little bit of a trek. So I decided to buckle up and try to figure out what my path was.
And was this just to kind of set the timeline? Is this throughout your 20s?
Yeah, early 20s.
Okay.
Right out of college.
I love it. This is what I tell my kids. Use your 20s for exploration. Like go find those passions, like go experience life, go live, lose, do it all, get it out of your system. Because like you can bring those experiences back, and like eventually you'll start to figure out what you like. And then you spend your 30s or maybe late 20s and 30s on that. So you get back and now you are, we'll say, mid 20s. Is this when you founded the company, or is this when you're like, oh, I need to buckle up and get a corporate job?
Actually, I was doing exactly what we talked about. I came back still clueless, but had a bunch of great experiences under my belt. And I just told myself, you got to figure something out. And I cast a super wide net. And that was like exploring some of my passions. I always loved athletics. I think maybe in a former life, I probably was a pro athlete. I always loved that lifestyle. I loved athletics, as I still do. My father was an attorney, so I, took the LSATs and like started applying to law school. I had friends that were like doing modeling and acting and things like that. So I got an agent and started going out on modeling shoots. I mean, these are stories I haven't told in a long time, Ryan. You're very talented at digging this stuff out. I probably don't share most of this information all the time. So I really cast a wide net. So I was, studying for law school. I became a fitness instructor. I was like going on like modeling shoots. I was doing all kinds of things. And, life was tough growing up in Los Angeles in, upper middle class area. I graduated from SC and, I, I, there were some rough times where I just didn't have a direction, but I think perseverance pulls through. And I think when you struggle in life, I think that's what shapes you and that's what creates work ethic and defines who you are. One of the interesting jobs I had, I won't even call it a job. I got together with a couple other guys. We during this was like the boom of the internet, and we put together a little hedge fund, and we were investing in these like new like tech IPOs that were coming out. I don't know if you remember that time in the late '90s, but something would come out on the market and it would just like explode, like double, triple in a matter of days or weeks. So we had a good time doing that. Then the IPO market dried out. And again, I thought of like, where can I go, have freedom, have autonomy on my decisions, have no cap. So that's when I decided, do I go into real estate or what have you? And I from there, having a little bit of experience with hedge funds, UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, was offering hedge funds and part of their wealth management program. So I thought, oh, let's go in that direction. That's when I got my Series 7, Series 6, 63, all those licenses. And sure enough, like halfway through my training, I come back from my 3 weeks of training in on the East Coast, and we're just getting ready to take our exams, and all these things happen. And then like 9/11 happens. And I was like, oh boy, now what are we going to do? Like, anybody who was going to take a call before, everybody was cautious. But I always look back on those days and I really attribute those struggles, and I really attribute like that's when I built my work ethic. That's when I was, up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, out of the house, like slugging it out, working on Saturdays. And I always look back at some of those times that really shaped me. And when I think about it, that's what my family did. Like work was like, I remember my grandfather telling me, you got to take care of the fort, like build the fort, protect the fort. The fort is what, it's what it is. It's protection.
Was your journey like a kind of like these things that continue to happen that kind of naturally took you towards the ultimate founding of the company, or was there a light switch? Like, and I'll give you an example. So I got in a little bit of trouble in the Navy. So I was a lost kid trying to find my way around life, and didn't do very well in school, like all of these different things. And so what do you do in that case? You join the Navy. So join the Navy, and you would think that the Navy would instill some discipline and some other things. It did, but it didn't happen in boot camp. It actually happened when I got into some trouble, and I had to go and see the captain, as they call it. And I went through captain's mast, and I got reduction in rate, restriction, and half months pay times 2. So there was like a whole bunch of things, but that was a moment for me. And there's a whole reason and a whole bunch of things that happened that I won't get into on this call. but that was a light switch moment. The way that you've been talking, like it's been all of these kind of like micro things that kind of kept taking you in this direction.
Yeah, there were times where I certainly felt like a piece of driftwood, like floating down the stream. What direction is the water going to take me? Wasn't very comforting. What happened next? I met a guy who had been selling Costco since they had one store. He was a former executive over at Sealy. Somebody approached him and said, "We want to sell Costco." 6 months later, and doing a little bit of the math, he figured, I got a much better career with this guy than I do at Sealy. And so they formed a company together. 20 some odd years later, he needed a little help and he wanted to expand a little bit. So I came on board with him with the work ethic that I had. He was 20 years my senior, so technology and things like that came very easy to me. I saw where he needed help, and I said it to him. I said, anything that's drudgery for you is an opportunity for me. And for 2 years, this guy and I were glued at the hips. Prior to that, he was a bit of a mentor during my time at UBS and so forth. So we got to spend time together and we got along. But from the moment we said go, I was on planes to China, visiting factories, like going to Costco, being in these pretty high level meetings at Costco, having Sealy as one of his accounts. That was one of a handful of accounts that did that type of volume. So they're pretty high level meetings. And then, to make a long story short, 2 years later, he just said, look, it's time for you to get out of the nest. And he kind of pushed me out, and just so grateful for that guy. Showed me the ropes, and, he and I are still friends today. There was nothing competitive because anything that was drudgery to him was an opportunity for me. So things that would have either fallen through the cracks or weren't terribly important, I took ownership of. And when I left, he gave me those things that didn't amount to much. So let's call that 2003 to 2005. In 2005, I went into business for myself, and I took some of those accounts. Some of those accounts I grew from, I would say one of them was like doing under $20 million a year. And when we ended up working together, we probably worked together until maybe 2 years ago. We had grown that company to $750 million a year. So I was I was committed. I was working hard. I worked the only way that I knew how. I had family that had great work ethic and discipline. I found something that I was good at, and I just sunk my teeth in. So a couple of success stories like that, I had built myself a good business. Not much of a personal life, but I built myself a pretty decent business over the years. 2005 to 2008 or 9, it was a recession type of era again. And I'll never forget a really pivotal moment in my life. I'm at the office. My family's not seeing much of me because I'm visiting. I'm going to trade shows, visiting customers, going overseas. And my mom called me up one day and she said, "Hey, I know it's kind of tough out there. I just want to make sure you're okay." And I'll never forget my response. My poor mom. I said, "Mom, someone out there, yes, a lot of people are hurting, but someone out there is making a fortune. Someone out there is making a fortune." I hung up the phone. I was like, yeah, what do I need to do to make a fortune? So I think those years, 2008, 2009, 2010, like I was doubling my business, tripling my business. It was just, when people are struggling, people are looking for solutions, and I doubled down and just went for it. And I went from just selling Costco, and then I turned that switch on. I would everyone I called, Walmart, Home Depot, Target, Wayfair, Amazon, no matter who I called, I said, "Look, you don't know me. I'm a Costco guy, but if you know anything about Costco, their margins are razor thin. They expect you to have razor thin margins. And if you're not near perfect, you're not going to last. You're not going to be profitable. So what does that mean to you, Mr. Buyer? It means I've got a bag of tricks. Like I've got industry leaders. Like I think we should talk. I can help you." And I just opened accounts everywhere and serviced those accounts. And that's what I did.
That's incredible. And so like, let's talk, cause this is the good stuff. So let's talk a little bit, about AP World Marketing, which is, you said you had accounts and you were selling into Costco. So is the whole thing with AP marketing, is it, like independent sales? Is it the gateway into retail distribution? So what is it exactly?
So AP World Marketing, I would represent overseas factories, importers, domestic manufacturers. They would outsource their sales to my company, and I would grow massive sales channels through the largest retailers in the world: Costco, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Kohl's, Lowe's, Bed Bath & Beyond. The list just goes on and on. People would start working at one place and move to another. We'd have a relationship. I would know them. We would have trust. I would know how they liked to buy. I would present things to them. And we just grew fast. I thought entrepreneurship was a very lonely endeavor. I was good at something. I got into it, had all those years of victory where you're double and triple digit growth. And then all of a sudden I realized that I suck at running a business. Like, I hit a ceiling. I didn't know how to run a business. I was just good at hustling, building relationships, committing to what I said I was going to do, doing it to the best of my ability. And that's when all these things started to change for me. And fortunately, I had two of my suppliers were in YPO. One of them was in Vistage, and one of them was in EO. I didn't qualify for YPO, so I interviewed with EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to make the time for this. Like, it's impossible. Like, monthly forms, like, who knows when I'm going to be in and out of town. The answer was no. So I literally waited for 2 years, and then finally in 2012 I joined. And I kid you not, a year went by. I looked back and I thought, I'm a much better leader, a much better manager, a much better friend, partner. I'm working less and I'm making more money. And I just thought, this place is gold. Fortunately, I was asked to join the board. And I just thought, the more time I can spend with this organization, the better. Again, I'm also a fourth generation Angelino, so there was no shortage of contacts, friends, and resources. But I would tell you, I've been in EO this is my 13th year. I've been on the board 11 of those 12 years. I'm currently the membership chair, one of my favorite roles. I'm also a past president in 21, 22, coming out of COVID. Spending time with not only like-minded, but like-valued people who are committed to helping you achieve your full potential absolutely changed my life. And if it wasn't for this organization, having the mentors, having the coaches, and then over the years, flipping that and mentoring new people coming in and coaching and facilitating and moderating, finding out about EOS, all this happened through the Entrepreneurs Organization.
And what was that? Because you talked about you delayed it for 2 years, so you knew it was there, and it sounded like it was in kind of the circles that you swam in, but it still took you 2 years. Did the pain in the business escalate to a degree of where you were like, I need somebody to share this with? Like what was that moment where you were like, I don't care what this is, maybe it will provide some relief?
It was a little bit of lockstep where I had met an entrepreneur at a dinner, and we would get together, my monthly conversations weekly, and share common solutions to common problems. I'd learn something from a CPA or somebody, share it with them. They would share it with me, and we would talk. Hey, it's just the two of us, but if we open this up a little bit, I think we'd accelerate our learning. And then we both felt the same way. We are too busy, don't have the time. And then, true story, 2 years later, we're having our normal conversation. He said, oh, by the way, I joined EO. And I was like, I won't say what I said on the air. And I was like, tell me. And he said, don't ask, just join. And I did. That's how that happened.
Got it. And when all of this stuff, because you're talking about some of the low points in the company, and those are incredibly stressful. And we'll just throw around some EOS lingo because most of the people that listen to this have some sort of understanding of EOS. Like at that point in time, were you sitting in every seat on the accountability chart?
Ryan, I, I don't think there is a page in the book Traction that doesn't address a problem or a mistake that I made in running a business. I mean, every mistake I've ever made, and you probably get this from some of the people you interview, every mistake I made in business is in that book. So the answer is yes. I was terrible at running a business, terrible at it.
Did AP World Marketing eventually implement EOS? Because we're going to get to that as well, because you yourself are now an EOS implementer. And so like, how did that go and what did that look like?
Yeah, so through EO, I found out about EOS because it was a common thread amongst excelling businesses. I had to find out more. I read the book. I would implement a plan. I would like throw scorecards. I'd start doing level 10s. And then, of course, 6 to 9 months later, I would say, we should start going back to doing that. Like, that was really helpful. So eventually I had to seek the help of an implementer to put together a structure to get it done. Now, while the tools are simple, they are not easy. And then fortunately through the community and through some help of, implementers and things like that, I got it done to the point where I don't even touch that business anymore, nor do I want to. I'm still around to, for advice. Typical visionary, which I always was. I just didn't know the visionary integrator, to use the EOS terms. I had no idea they existed. I always thought there was just something wrong with me.
Yes. I feel like there's something wrong with all visionaries. We're all kind of in our own class. I was talking to Kyle. I don't know if you know Cal Riley. I was talking to him yesterday, and this subject actually came up where in all of my businesses, I've sat in the visionary seat, but not to the degree in which I could truly pull back. And maybe that speaks more to the integrator or the lack of integrator, depending upon which year we were in. But his story and example really kind of sounds like yours. Like when you say you don't really touch it, like you still sit in the visionary seat at the company.
Because of those years of struggling, of like finding my path, finding my passion, and we're not talking years, it was probably well over a decade. Helping entrepreneurs, and that's probably also why I serve on the EO board. It is a non-paid position. I spend plenty of time, hopefully ensuring a better future of our chapter. I get to do what I love to do, and that's helping entrepreneurs. So as long as I'm helping, I'm happy. So like talking with a buyer or doing that kind of stuff, like I have no interest in anymore. Like, fortunately, we're at a place in our life where, listen, I think we all chase money. We all knew it in our 20s, maybe our 30s, where don't chase the money, find something you like to do. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but I need money and that's what I want. And how much can I make? That's all I thought of. That drove me. Now, I get so much fulfillment in this community of entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs reach their full potential, whether it's helping people get in EO or helping my fellow EO members in my chapter or elsewhere, sharing experiences. Regardless of EOS, that is like fulfills me in such a great way. And then to get to be an EOS implementer, to help companies run a better business, help them live a better life, to help them like alleviate the pain that I went through and maybe short circuit some of that learning that I had to go through in all those years, that drives me. So whether AP World Marketing exists or thrives, this is probably the drop in the bucket that burns the boat. I have no idea, but thank you, Ryan. It's not that important to me. Now, if I can take somebody put them in the right seat and coach them so that they're fulfilled, then that drives me. And that's what I've sought to do in AP World Marketing. Get the right person in the right seat where you're thriving, and I can coach and help mentor you and get you where you need to be.
Yes. Everything you just said there resonates so deeply. And I agree with you. Like, and you're right. Like, we hear this growing up, like, don't chase the money. I remember I was getting this advice in my 20s. We had a zombie event called Run for Your Lives, and we scaled it, and it was all about like, how much money could we make? Now, we didn't make very much money. We generated a lot of revenue, but we didn't actually make that much money. And that was a lesson that I had to carry with me to my next business. But I agree with you there. And now I'm at a place where it's like, what makes me happy? Like, what is fulfilling? Granted, I'm in the recruiting space now, of all things, but that goes back to people. Like, my Vistage chair was all about, he was like, go look at your P&L and pick your favorite line item. Go do that for a while. And for me, it was people. And so, like, I'm kind of living what you're talking about, still very, very, very much active in the business. But I hear what you're saying there, where it's like, what fills us? Like, what brings meaning, joy, happiness? And very rarely is that money. I realize there's a flip side to that, where if you don't have money, or if you're still in that like trying to figure it out, like it's a bit harder. And then you became an EOS implementer. And so how, like, what was this? You joined EO, you found out about EOS, you implemented EOS into your company, and then you said, I found it. Like, this is my life's calling. And now you're an EOS implementer.
Yeah. I mean, truth be told, I think it was I think a lot of people flirt with the idea and think, oh, they learn the tools, they use them, and they think, this is great. And then they flirt with that idea of actually becoming an EOS implementer. So again, I probably vacillated on that. Maybe it was in the back of my head for a year or 2, 3, maybe. And then I would just get together with my friends in the community that were implementers. And one of them just said, just do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And yeah, I think when you see the tools and you see them work, and the depth of understanding of those tools starts to click, and you think, I want to share these with other people. So that's what happened.
And when you're going in as an EOS implementer, like, I'm sure you see a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of obstacles and other things that have to be accomplished as you're going and you're rolling it out at the senior leadership team level, maybe 12 to 18 months later throughout the entire organization. Like, generally in those first couple meetings that you're having with a company, like, what is that one thing that remains consistent of, like, we got to fix before this thing's going to work, we got to fix this?
Now, you've been through the process of implementing EOS in your company, correct?
Yes.
At least once.
Uh-huh.
So I want to make sure I understand your question correctly, but what is the one thing that I consistently see teams struggle with when they implement?
As they're implement, like, I could give you my answer, but it might taint your response. But before you see, like, before it starts clicking, before, like, EOS is truly implemented, like, what are some of those challenges that you see where it's like, before we can get to where we're going, like, we got to have this, or we got to fix this, or we have to do these things?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. However, I think every company and every client is different. Some people pick it up faster than others. Some people like one tool over another. But I think it's such a holistic system of, like, practical tools that all begin to tie into and support each other. So some people adopt it very quickly, and other people just struggle. Some people don't have the resources. And I think the important thing there is just, you got to meet your clients where they're at and just help them get on the bike and help them start that journey.
Nice. What do you look for in clients? I know there's some folks that are like, I focus on family-run businesses, or I focus on this. Like, do you have a certain vertical or type of client, or are you just like, I'll help anybody?
Yeah, I thought about that a ton going in. I thought, maybe I do something with just sports, or maybe I do something in like the mental health field, or some things that I was just passionate about. And then as I started going from blue collars to service oriented to, uh, product oriented companies, really it's about the people for me. So, one, it's great if they like EOS, because then that's not a battle. Two, it's great if they like me, so that's not a battle.
Check,
And
check.
then yeah, and then the third one is you want to make sure that someone's coachable. You want to make sure that they're not, there's not friction between you then. If you don't like them and they don't like you, maybe you're not the right implementer for them. Maybe it's just not right for them in general. And in that case, you just find someone else. The community is great. So we're all abundance mindset and just happy to, get you matched up with the right person.
Love it. Um, do you focus on the LA region specifically, or do you go into virtual rooms? Like, how do you look at that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I initially thought I'm going to stick in LA. Like I've spent so much time on airplanes, I don't want to do that. And for the most part, I did. And then I did a virtual session and loved it. They loved it. I loved it. And that actually influenced how I run my in-person sessions. I run them very similarly. I project things on a wall. And so to answer your question is, as long as we're somewhat on the Pacific time zone, I'm good to go.
Nice. Are there things that I think we tried this. So our implementer was Margaret Dixon, and I'm trying to think if we did any virtual, if we were always in person. Like, are there? I imagine disconnecting. So the whole point of going into a session is to work on the business, not in the business. And a big part of that is like emails flashing, your text message going off, bill from sales saying, I got this major account, I need you to talk to them to get it across the goal line. All of those things that distract us from working on the business are I mean, I'm sure the dynamics are different. Like, how do you control the environment effectively in a virtual session versus in person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of elements to being a good implementer. One, you got to know your material. Two, you have to be able to read the room. And three, you have to helps if you're entertaining, but you got to work on your facilitation skills. You got to be able to read the room. You want to give plenty of breaks. You want to, create the desired effect and goal, get everybody to buy in. We tell everybody, hey, let's be present. We'll take plenty of breaks. This only works if we all do it this way. You just try to. I'm one of those guys that disliked being told what to do. So you learn to talk to people in ways that hopefully I would be receptive to. Hey, like we're all after this, right? And this is what we want. So can we all agree that we want to hold each other accountable? And that's also some facilitation techniques I've learned through EO and all those years of being in forums and moderating and things like that. Having all those moderator trainings, you just learn techniques. Share the responsibility. So I usually assign roles to people, like who's our parking lot czar, who's our timekeeper, who's our energizer, who's one that's going to celebrate things, or a quotition, if that's a word. Like if we come up with a one-liner that people are like, wow, that's really great. Who's collecting all those? So when you assign participation, then everybody is kind of drawn into the common goal. That's just some of the facilitation techniques that I've learned.
Got quotitioner. I'm taking that down, and that's going to be someone's assignment now in the quarterlies. I love that, of like you see something and just take like that one thing down as a note. My brain always goes to marketing and sales. That's generally where I live, but that's really good. Okay, last two questions, I promise. But one of these, I think I said earlier, I was like, no, they like no predetermined questions. We just kind of see where it takes us. This one is a predetermined one, which is if there's an entrepreneur out there and they're just getting started on their journey, like you've been through it, like you family businesses and then traveling the world and then coming back. And it sounds like a lot of the positions that you held were very entrepreneurial. Like, here are problems, please go help us solve those problems. That's very different than, say, the military, which is like, hey, here's the problem and here's the procedure in which to resolve that problem. What's kind of one piece of advice that you would give to someone that's about to embark on the same journey?
I would say you're not alone. Like, we've all had help, and helping others, I argue, who benefits more, the mentor or the mentee? Because I know that helping others, it does so much for me. It feels great, but it also reinforces the lessons that I have learned so that I can remember to practice eating my own cooking.
I love it. You were saying something along those lines earlier, and it made me think about, I think it's Ryan Holiday's book, The Ego is the Enemy. I think it's from this book, but he talks about you should always have 3 different kind of groups. And one is a group of folks that are where you want to be one day. And so like they're constantly like helping you avoid those obstacles as you're going along. One is a peer group. And so that's more of like similar size, stage, ambitious. So shares values and like direction. But essentially like you've got a group of accountability partners. And then the last, which is what you just said, which is a group that is aspiring to almost be where you want to be. And you can reinforce kind of all of those lessons and keep that knife sharp along the journey. So I loved what you just said right there. Okay. All right. So Adam, someone just listened to this, and more than one person, by the way. Usually we get a couple thousand. So, but some people just listened to this and they were like, I need some Adam in my life. I'm looking for an EOS implementer, and I'd like to reach out. How can they get a hold of you?
That's a great question. Knowing that I don't know how to use social media, but I'm imagining you're going to put this on LinkedIn somewhere. So I will have to ask somebody how to post a link to this on my page, or better yet, find someone who loves doing that stuff and give it to them. But there must be, or if there isn't, there will be a way to get in touch with me or book some time with me. I love talking to entrepreneurs, so bring it on.
Love it. Love it. Okay. What we'll do is after this, we'll coordinate what those things are, and I'll make sure they're in the show notes. So just in case we miss it as we're uploading it to the social media, we'll make sure that it's all captured there so people can reach out to you.
Ryan, this has been amazing. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and taking an hour out of your Tuesday. Tuesdays are busy days. So I thank you so much for taking a Tuesday afternoon to come on and share your journey, some wisdom, and I don't know, it's inspiring. And just the way that you've kind of leaned on community and the aspects in which you've grown together with communities, I think it's such a key part to entrepreneurship, and it doesn't get talked about enough.
Thank you, Ryan. This has been great.